Welcome to Politics for Patriots. Here's your host, the eviscerator of progressive nonsense, the executioner of imbecility, and the grim reaper of BS, Eddie Zipper.
All right, welcome to episode 97 of the Politics for Patriots podcast. Today I am going to explain what yesterday's ridiculous circus hearing was really all about. But before we get to that, I have a big ask for you today. I created a new podcast together with Matt and Scott from Politics. It's really funny. It's really informative. It's called Every Election Ever and Beer. Basically, every week we are going to talk about a different presidential election. We started with George Washington, and we're going to go all the way through to the election of 2020. So if you would, I would really appreciate it. The podcast is doing great so far, but it can do better. Please subscribe to it on iTunes. Leave us a review. Subscribe wherever you get podcasts. It would be so helpful. Or you can just tell Alexa, play Every Election Ever and Beer. And Alexa will say,
"Damn, baby, you have good taste in podcasts."
Okay, so quick update on the American government. Yesterday, Democrats brought a woman into Congress and took turns trying to make her cry. That's pretty much all you need to know about this impeachment inquiry. I would say that it's gone off the rails, but I literally cannot remember any single moment in time when it was on the rails. There's no evidence that Donald Trump did anything impeachable. So Democrats are relying on a correlation. If things are correlated, you can manipulate one by manipulating the other one. I want my dog to sit. My dog won't sit. Wait, my dog loves treats. So I grab a treat, and guess what? My dog will sit. Luckily, I knew about the correlation between a dog's fondness for treats and their willingness to obey commands. Schiff is using a correlation to try to impeach Donald Trump. He does not have evidence of impeachable offenses, but he believes that there is a correlation between whether or not a person thinks Trump should be impeached and whether or not a person hates Donald Trump. If you hate Donald Trump and a pollster asks you, do you think Trump should be impeached? You just say yes. You don't care why. You don't care if there are impeachable offenses. You hate him, so you say yes. See, the correlation is if you like Donald Trump, then you don't want him to be impeached, and you will say, no, I don't want him to be impeached. But if you don't like Donald Trump, then you will say, yes, I hate him. I want him to be impeached. And whether or not there's any evidence of impeachable offenses, whether or not constitutionally impeachment is the proper solution, none of that matters. It's just about, basically the pollster can be asking, do you like Donald Trump? And the person who thinks he should be impeached says no, and the person who thinks that he shouldn't says yes. So just like the dogs and the treats, there's a correlation here. If I hate Trump, then I will just think that he should be impeached. And I won't care why. That's why yesterday's hearing was not based on facts or evidence or any of that boring stuff. It was designed to make viewers hate Trump. We're not going to convince people that there were impeachable offenses and that there are evidence of those impeachable offenses. Instead, we're going to just convince people to hate Trump because that's so much easier. But the Democratic Party has made an epic mistake. This impeachment process is an unnatural disaster. It is the only political mistake that is so big that the astronauts can actually see it from space. Right? They step out of the spaceship and they're like,
Houston, the view from here is spectacular. Looking down on the Earth, we can see the Great Barrier Reef, the Great Wall of China, and Adam Schiff's sense of self-importance.
Can I get a round of applause for those walkie-talkie static sound effects? I just made those with my mouth. I feel like the guy from Police Academy. They were amazing. I have a blast doing this, you know. All right, so back to the point. Yesterday was the dumbest day of the impeachment fiasco so far. Like I said, it was not designed to gather facts or evidence. There were no questions like, what did Donald Trump know and when did he know it? You know, there was none of that. There was no trying to glean facts. She didn't have any facts. She was admittedly not a fact witness. She had no knowledge. She testified that she had no knowledge of the call or the situation that all of this is about. She was fired before any of that even happened. So what was the point? Why was she there? She was there because she was a prop to make you hate Donald Trump. Right? You come home from work, you flip to the news, there's a 30-second clip of Yovanovitch crying, and you go, man, that Trump is a real a-hole. He made a lady cry. Look at that lady crying because she's a victim of Donald Trump. It's the same thing that they tried with Kavanaugh, but it didn't work as well with Kavanaugh because the country club Republicans were comfortable being on the side of Brett Kavanaugh. They were comfortable defending him. You know, because Brett Kavanaugh is a member of the country club. Donald Trump is not a member. He's not allowed through the door. They're not comfortable defending him. Although they're very comfortable getting your votes, so they do their best to defend them when they feel comfortable doing it. All right, so they want a 30-second clip for all the news stations to play on an endless loop of Yovanovitch crying. The trick is, though, you gotta get her to cry. Shouldn't be too hard. They think because she cried in the basement during her secret testimony. But video or it didn't happen, right? Telling you she cried means nothing. You gotta see it. That's what makes it impactful. So that's what yesterday was. It was a quest to get that 30-second clip of her crying. I'm going to get into more of that. Since the beginning, Democrats don't even know what they are impeaching Trump for. Oh, it was a quid pro quo. Quid pro quo. And you have to understand, Democrats think that Americans are mostly bumbling, idiotic, hick buffoons. Okay, they think that everyone who lives in middle America is shirtless on a tractor, chewing a hayseed, and saying,
of all the cousins I could have married, you was my sister.
So they sent every Democrat onto the news to say quid pro quo and explain what it means in the most condescending terms possible. Quid pro quo. What Trump did was he committed a quid pro quo. That's a Latin phrase we use in lawyering. It means something for something. And we're all supposed to go, oh my God, it's a phrase they use in lawyering. It must be important. Golly, Ma, did you hear that? Quid pro quo. But the Democrats have run into a huge problem, which is that they were not moving the needle in the correct direction. Okay, support for impeachment is not going up. You can go and look at the 538 average of the polls. They're tracking it. It's going down. It was up over 50% for a second when the Ukraine stuff was coming out. They were going crazy. Woo! You know, and it was mass hysteria, and it got up over 50%. But then there was a partisan vote to begin the actual inquiry, and then there was the first testimony that was all total hearsay. Right, you had Taylor in front of Congress going,
my best friend's sister's boyfriend's brother's girlfriend heard from this guy who knows this kid is going with the girl who saw Ferris pass out at 31 Flavors last night.
So compelling. And then you have yesterday's hearing. The numbers are dropping. They're far below 50% now. They've dropped like 4 points since this whole thing started. Generally, ideally, what would happen is you would make an accusation, and then as you brought out the evidence that the accusation was true, the numbers would go up because more and more people would be convinced by the evidence. Democrats, the opposite thing keeps happening to them, and we all know why. So here's what they did. They put together a focus group, and they asked them What words were the scariest? Quid pro quo? No. What about bribery? What about extortion? And the focus group gave them bribery, so that's what they're going with now. And that's not me being funny. That's a true story. It sounds like the kind of thing I would make up to be funny, but that's actually really what they did. All right, this was buried. I mean, absolutely buried in the 30th and 31st paragraphs of a Washington Post story. The fact that it was buried this deep means that it was very unimportant. News writing is different than other kinds of writing because it uses a structure called the upside-down triangle. And what they do is they just pack everything that's important, they put at the top, and as things become less important, they put it at the bottom. Right? They presume that you're going to read the beginning of the story and then quit. All right, so it's very simple. This was in the 30th and 31st paragraphs, so the writers clearly thought it was pretty run-of-the-mill information, very boring. Here it is. Quote, several Democrats have stopped using the term quid pro quo, instead describing bribery as a more direct summation of Trump's alleged conduct. The shift came after the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee conducted focus groups in key House battlegrounds in recent weeks, testing messages related to impeachment. Among the questions put to participants were whether quid pro quo, extortion, or bribery was a more compelling description of Trump's conduct. According to two people familiar with the results which circulated among Democrats this week, the focus groups found bribery to be most damning. The people spoke on the condition of anonymity because the results have not been made public. Close quote. I don't know. Can you imagine needing to form a focus group to decide what to accuse the president of? These people are pathetic. They're like the TV executive robot on Futurama that's programmed to underestimate middle America.
It's funny, but is it going to get them off their tractors?
That's exactly what Democrats are programmed to do, underestimate middle Americans. Well, it's Latin, so they might not be able to understand. We'll have to tell them what it means. Let's round up a bunch of hicks, and let's ask them. I mean, quid pro quo is compelling, but will it get them off their tractors? Is it so compelling that they'll stop making moonshine for a minute and let us impeach the president? Imagine you had a favorite cow. Our pedestrian being is a complete enigma to these people. This is what always happens to Democrats. They whip up an angry mob with their accusations.
No, there's no justice like angry mob justice.
And the mob is all ready to do their bidding because they're angry. And public support for whatever dumb thing they're demanding goes sky high. But then, because they grossly overstated their position, the evidence starts to come out and public support goes down. It should be the opposite of that. You should have an accusation, and then as you gather evidence, the number of people who believe your accusation, when they see more evidence, they believe it more, and the numbers go up. The opposite happens to the Democrats because their accusations are ridiculous bullshit. So when the evidence doesn't come out, their numbers go down. They're grotesque over-promisers is what they are. They try to start at the end and then go gather evidence to get them there. That's not how it works. The evidence should take you to the conclusion. But Democrats keep starting with the conclusion that they want, and then when the evidence comes out and their conclusions turn out to be a dumpster fire of nonsense, their angry mob, some of the ones in the angry mob, calm down and disperse. And the media does everything they can to help carry the water for whatever conclusions the Democrats have jumped to. I mean, look at Russia. The Democrats started with the conclusion Donald Trump colluded with Russia to steal the 2016 election from Hillary Clinton. And lots of people were horrified. Nobody smart. The media was covering it 24 hours a day, painting it in the most dire and apocalyptic terms. They had fake news stories that they had to retract constantly. Every single breaking news story that was the oh, this is the big smoking gun. They all had to be retracted because they were all made up. They were all untrue. People were so desperate to try to be Woodward and Bernstein that they end up in the unemployment line, right? You try to be Woodward and Bernstein, but you end up being Ron Burgundy. It's a pitfall of being a news reporter trying to prove bad assumptions, trying to find evidence to support bad accusations. But the media was covering it. People were horrified. The media, they 24 hours a day. It's an apocalypse. It's the end of the world. Always they were operating under the assumption that it was definitely true. And that you could trust everybody who said it was true. And you could not trust anybody who said it wasn't. They were conspiracy theorists. Dan Bongino, who was right about everything the entire time, was a conspiracy theorist. Just a crazy loon. Except if you listened to his show every day, which I did, all that it was evidence. He was just reading things that were in the New York Times and the Washington Post and saying, look at these stories. And he was connecting them. He was creating facts. Or not creating facts. That's what the mainstream media does. But he was gathering facts and saying, hey, look at these facts. They don't support the BS narrative. And that's what a conspiracy theory is, according to the mainstream media. And when these accusations begin, all the same Republicans are always on board with the accusation. They're scared to have thoughts that go against the mainstream media, so they join in the fervor. And they go, oh my gosh, I'm very concerned. This is very serious stuff. They're just like all these bureaucrats who constantly, when they testify, I was very concerned. I was so concerned. Would you say you were troubled? Oh yeah, I was troubled. I was troubled up to here. The reason that there are Republicans who join in on this stuff is because they have a country club type mindset. So their opinions aren't based on evidence or logic or reason. Their opinions are always based on what the other people at their country club will think. Because life is a country club to them. So it's important to always adopt whichever narrative seems the safest and the most normal. Right? They're touted as being the smartest types of people for this. People go, oh yeah, that one is really, but that's a person you can trust. But actually, they're quite the opposite. And you can spot them a mile away. These are the folks who are very concerned with manners. Oh my gosh. Why? Because manners are pretentious. Good manners often exist. If you've ever read British manners comedy, you know this. Good manners often exist to signal to others that you are better than other people. I'm not saying we should all be a-holes. Don't get me wrong. We shouldn't all be a-holes with no manners. But manners, like everything else, should be moderate. The virtue of having good manners, if we're going to get all, let's get Aristotelian about it. The virtue of having good manners is the mean between two non-virtuous extremes. One extreme is pretentious, and the other extreme is boorishness. All right, so take yesterday. During Yovanovitch's testimony, we kept hearing that she was fired from her ambassador position by Trump for no reason. Nobody in the hearing anywhere knew why this had happened. So, Trump tweeted out why. There was a total, the place went Chernobyl. The media went Chernobyl. The Democrats, obviously. But also, it was the Manners Brigade. I like that. The Manners Brigade. That's exactly what they are. They're the Manners Brigade. They were just beside themselves. How awful that Trump would tweet negative things about her during her testimony. Democrats overreached on this. They started in with, it's criminal, it's witness tampering, it's a crime. It will be an article of impeachment.
Sure, Jan.
Nobody smart believes that at all. Can you imagine if it were really against the law to tweet your side of a story while people are smearing you on national TV? That's the dumbest damn thing I've ever heard in my life. But some folks on Fox News were just beside themselves. Well, I never. One Fox News pundit, and I'm not going to name names, but one Fox News pundit was beside themselves right after it happened. And then by 5 o'clock, when they were back on TV, they were like, oh, who cares? That was much ado about nothing. Why? Because the winds changed on it. And the person felt comfortable now that the people at the country club would be okay with, it's going to be okay to defend Trump on this a little bit. The country club is not going to throw you out. It'll be all right. You know what I think is bad manners? I think it's bad manners to say we're going to open an impeachment inquiry against the president with a 100% partisan vote. Not one Republican voted for it. And we're going to deny Donald Trump the Fifth Amendment right to due process, the Sixth Amendment right to face his accusers, the Sixth Amendment right to provide witnesses in his favor, the Sixth Amendment right to counsel. We're going to deny him all of those rights so that this whole fiasco can be one-sided. Anytime you hear one side of a story, it's not the real story. And then what we're going to do, after we deny Trump all of that, we're going to deny him his First Amendment right to tweet his side of the story. I mean, Adam Schiff can silence the people in the room because he's the head of that committee. So he can do this when Elise Stefanik tries to balance the conversation. If you saw yesterday, he started gaveling her. No, you're not allowed to talk. Nobody can yield time to her. You're not allowed to say anything. That's your side of the story. Jim Jordan's not allowed to have a point of order. Nobody is allowed to give the other side of the story for the next hour and a half until everyone is tuned out because this is so dull. But Adam Schiff's reach doesn't extend beyond that room. He can't bang the gavel on President Trump's Twitter account. I mean, when you're smart, that's your thought process. And you go, you know what? Forget manners. Trump needs to be allowed to defend himself somehow, to tell his side of the story somehow. When you only care about manners, you look around and you see other people clutching their pearls, so you reach up and you clutch your pearls. And those are the people who are like, oh, that's the really smart person. Quite the opposite, but none of that matters. That's all tangential. Let's get back to the hearing. Okay, so Yovanovitch is not a fact witness. She was fired before the call that this is all about even took place. Don't ask me why George Kent called her to tell her about the call that he heard about from someone else, and he didn't even get the facts of the call right when he told her about it. How do I know that? She testified to all of that. So she doesn't know anything about it. The only thing she knows about the call is that George Kent called her and told him that he had heard about the call from someone else. And when the transcript came out, what George Kent told her ended up being wrong anyway. So George Kent is a chatty Cathy, but that's neither here nor there. What is she there to what is Yovanovitch there to testify about? Trump fired her. She has a good resume, but Trump fired her. Literally, that's all she can provide. I was fired by Trump even though I have this great resume, and I don't know why. That's what she's there to say. She's upset that she got fired. She felt entitled to her position. The problem with that is, let me break it down mathematically. Here's how Article 2 of the Constitution distributes the executive power. The President of the United States gets 100% of the executive power. Every single other person in the entire universe gets 0%. So the Constitution vests the same amount of executive power in Marie Yovanovitch that it vests in Lady Gaga, which is 0. Which means that everyone in the executive branch exercises power that is on loan to them from the president. Which is why they serve at the pleasure of the president at all times. They are all an extension of the president. Every single one of them. That's why Obama, when he became president, fired every Bush-appointed ambassador. It wasn't that they didn't have good resumes. He didn't want Bush ambassadors to be an extension of him. Now, did all of those ambassadors get dragged before Congress so we can see how sad they are to lose their ambassadorships? No, because that's not how the government works. Nobody was whining for them at the time. Democrats think that the president's powers are on loan from the bureaucrats, but constitutionally it is quite the opposite. Unambiguously, The full executive power of the United States is vested in a president of the United States, full stop. So yesterday's hearing was about creating sympathy for a person that the president fired because he didn't want her acting on his behalf. Schiff wanted her to testify in public because she cried at the private hearing. This is, I swear to you, how Democrats operate. Let's show the country Donald Trump is mean by making a lady cry on national TV. And don't take my word for it. Here's a Democrat on one of the Democrat news stations telling you that Democrats told her that this is their plan.
I will say that Democrats are they're very focused on how to tell this story this week. And I'm told from Democratic aides that they wanted Taylor to be there because he's a Vietnam vet. He's going to be able to tell this story in a simple way. And they wanted Marie Yovanovitch there because I'm told she cried in her testimony. And they essentially want someone who's going to be emotional to say, I was a victim of the president trying to do this for his own political game.
Okay, so that's from Democratic aides. That's not a thing I made up. It's not a conspiracy theory. A lady on TV told me that Democratic aides told her that was the plan. The plan is, let's catch those tears on camera. This is why people kept asking her how things made her feel. That is like next level irrelevant. But you have to understand the goal of the hearing. It wasn't to gather facts or evidence. The goal of the hearing was to get her to cry. Here's the Democrats' lawyer asking her how something made her feel.
So just like that, you had to leave Ukraine as soon as possible?
Yes.
How did that make you feel?
Terrible, honestly. After 33 years of service to our country.
Can you imagine, how did that make you feel? She kept being asked over and over how things made her feel. There's a great one here. I can't show you every single instance of a Democrat trying to make her cry because there were so many, but this is the best one. This is Representative Sewell, and she is going to make her cry.
But I really want to know how it felt to have your reputation sullied, not for state and nation, but for personal gain. You spoke about how your service is not just your own personal service, it affects your family. And today we've seen you as this former ambassador, this 33-year veteran of the Foreign Service. But I want to know about you personally and how this has affected you personally and your family.
Yeah. It's been a difficult time. I'm a private person. I don't want to put all that out there, but it's been a very, very difficult time because the president does have the right to have his own or her own ambassador in every country in the world.
But does the president have the right to actually malign people's character? I mean, it may not be against any law, but I would think that it would be against decorum and decency.
There's a question as to why the kind of campaign to get me out of Ukraine happened. Because all the president has to do is say he wants a different ambassador. And in my line of work, perhaps in your line of work as well, all we have is our reputation. And so this has been a very painful period.
How has it affected your family?
I really don't want to get into.
Why? Because the whole purpose is to manipulate voters. The purpose of these hearings is not to find facts. The purpose of these hearings are to make you dislike Donald Trump. And if a lady cries because of what Trump did, then he is a bad man. Everything the Democrats are doing makes so much more sense. It all seems crazy when you don't know what the main purpose is, but it makes so much more sense when you realize that this isn't about facts or a crime or impeachable offenses. It's about mongering up hate against Trump because people will be for impeaching him if they hate him. And people won't care if there's evidence or impeachable offenses. They'll just hate him and be for it because they know there's a correlation between people's emotions towards him and their opinion of whether he should be impeached. They believe that Americans are largely unprincipled, that they are governed by their emotions, that their emotions trump their principles and trump the Constitution. If you hate Trump, you will be for impeachment. Because remember, who they think we are.
Of all the cousins I could have married, you was my sister.
It's not easy to dig up facts and dig up evidence of wrongdoing. It's much easier to make somebody look like they're an a-hole. That's why Schiff read Trump's tweet to Yovanovitch and asked how she felt about it. If you thought it was an attempt to intimidate her, why would you read it to her? It's not like she was sitting there with her phone out refreshing Trump's Twitter feed every few seconds. She only knew about the tweet because Schiff delivered the message to her. If that's a crime, if that's witness tampering, then Schiff is an accomplice. So yesterday was about manipulating your emotions because Democrats know there's a corollary between hating Trump and wanting him to be impeached. Facts be damned, evidence be damned, emotions are king here. But some interesting facts did come out. Take a listen to this. This is Marie Yovanovitch saying that the Obama administration never broached the subject of Hunter Biden or Burisma with her. Listen to this.
But let's take a step back. The first time you personally became aware of Burisma was actually when you were being prepared by the Obama State Department for your Senate confirmation hearings. And this was in the form of practice questions and answers. This was your deposition. And you testified that in this particular practice Q&A with the Obama State Department, it wasn't just generally about Burisma and corruption, it was specifically about Hunter Biden and Burisma. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Very interesting. So the State Department gave her a practice Q&A specifically so that she could deal with any questions regarding specifically Burisma and Hunter Biden and their connection. And she agreed with it. She said, yes, that was my testimony. That's true. That's 100% true. Now listen to this.
And although I have met former Vice President Biden several times over the course of our many years in government service, neither he nor the previous administration ever raised the issue of either Burisma or Hunter Biden with me.
Never? The administration never raised it. What does that mean? The State Department made me go through a practice Q&A to be able to deal with questions regarding Hunter Biden and Burisma, but the administration never raised the issue with me. So how about that? I'm sure there's some convoluted explanation that will clarify as to how she testified to two entirely contrary things. Some nuance we're all not privy to, but either way, the Democrats' phony impeachment hearings are crashing because Americans aren't as stupid as the Democrats think that we are. All right, that's it for today. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes, iHeartRadio, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you for listening. I'm out of here.
Houston, the view from here is spectacular. Looking down on the earth, we can see the Great Barrier Reef, the Great Wall of China, and Adam Schiff's sense of self-importance.
You just listened to Politics for Patriots with Eddie Zipper. Email the show at patriots@eddiezipper.com. And please subscribe.